David Letterman's coffee cup shattered on the floor when Cher suddenly ripped off her wig mid-interview and threw it across the stage. Paul Schaefer's hands froze on the keyboard. The audience gasped. And for the next 11 minutes, the woman who had reinvented herself more times than anyone in show business stopped reinventing and started revealing. What she said about survival, about aging, about refusing to disappear, it wasn't just honest, it was revolutionary. And NBC would spend years debating whether America was ready to hear a woman tell the truth this raw. It was a Wednesday night in February 1985, and Late Night with David Letterman was humming with energy. The show had been on the air for 3 years now, and David Letterman, 38 years old with his trademark curly brown hair and self-deprecating wit, had carved out his unique space in late-night television. He sat behind his wooden desk in Studio 6A at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, flipping through his blue cue cards. The monologue had been sharp. The audience was hot. Paul Schaefer and the band were in perfect form. Everything was clicking. Letterman glanced at the notes for his next guest and grinned. Cher, the one-name wonder, the woman who'd been famous since he was in college, the woman who refused to fade away no matter how many times the industry tried to write her off. 30 seconds, the stage manager called out. Letterman straightened his tie and looked into the camera as the red light blinked on. Welcome back, Letterman said with genuine enthusiasm. Our next guest has had more comebacks than I've had bad haircuts. She's a singer, an actress, an Oscar winner, and a woman who simply will not go away no matter how hard the music industry tries to make her. Please welcome Cher. The audience erupted into applause and cheers. Paul Schaefer hit a dramatic, theatrical chord on the keyboard, and the band launched into a funky, confident groove. And from backstage, moving with that unmistakable Cher presence, she walked out. She was 38 years old, dressed in classic Cher fashion. A black leather jacket covered in silver studs over a sheer black bodysuit, tight black pants, and thigh-high boots. Her hair was long, wild, jet black with a slight wave. Her makeup was dramatic, dark eyes, bold lips. She looked like she'd just stepped off a rock stage or out of a music video. The audience was on its feet, screaming. Cher waved, blew kisses, and struck a pose that made the crowd go even wilder. She reached Letterman, who stood up with a big smile. They hugged briefly, and Cher kissed him on the cheek. Cher, you look amazing, Letterman said. I always look amazing. Cher shot back with a grin. The audience laughed. Letterman laughed. She settled into the guest chair, crossing her legs, completely owning the space. So, Letterman said, sitting back down, you've got a new album out. I do, Cher said. It's called Heart of Stone, and it's good, really good. You sound confident. I am confident, Cher said. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know when something's good. Letterman smiled. 20 years. That's a long career. It is, Cher agreed, especially for a woman. There was something in the way she said it, a slight edge, that made Letterman pause. What do you mean by that? Cher leaned forward slightly. I mean they get to have long careers. They get to age gracefully and be respected for their experience. Women, we get told we're past our prime at 30. The audience was quiet now, sensing something shifting. You're 38, Letterman said carefully. I am, Cher said. And you know how many times I've been told my career is over? How many times I've been written off as yesterday's news? A lot? Constantly. Cher said. After Sonny and I broke up, they said I was done. When disco died, they said I was done. When I turned 35, they said I was done. Every single time, the music industry, which is run entirely by men, by the way, has tried to tell me that my time is up. Her voice was getting stronger now, and every single time, I've proven them wrong, because I refuse to disappear. I refuse to let a bunch of men in suits decide when I'm no longer valuable. Letterman was completely focused now. That sounds exhausting. It is exhausting. Cher said, do you know what it's like to have to reinvent yourself every 5 years just to stay relevant? To have to completely transform your image, your sound, your look, just so people will still pay attention to you. She gestured to herself. This isn't just how I dress. This is armor. This hair, this makeup, these clothes. It's all a costume I have to wear to survive in this business. Because if I showed up looking like a normal 38-year-old woman, you know what would happen? Nobody would care. Nobody would book me. Nobody would play my music. The silence in the studio was profound. Paul Schaefer had stopped moving at his keyboard, staring at Cher with wide eyes. Letterman leaned forward. Cher, I don't think, let me finish," Cher said gently but firmly. "Please." Letterman nodded. What Cher did next would shock everyone. Cher reached up to her head and grabbed her hair. The audience gasped, confused, and then she pulled. The long black hair came off in one piece. It was a wig. Underneath, her real hair was much shorter, darker, simpler. She held the wig in her hands for a moment, looking at it, then tossed it onto Letterman's desk. "There," she said. "That's the real me. Or at least, that's my real hair today. Who knows what it'll be tomorrow?" The audience was stunned into silence. Some people were laughing nervously. Others were shocked. Letterman stared at the wig on his desk, then at Cher. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Cher said. "I'm making a point. Everything about me that you see, the hair, the clothes, the makeup, even the way I talk sometimes, it's all constructed. It's all a performance, because that's what's required of women in this industry." She ran her hand through her real hair, which was tousled and natural looking. "Men get to just show up and be themselves. Bruce Springsteen wears jeans and a t-shirt. Bob Dylan looks like he just rolled out of bed. And they're called authentic, real, genuine. But if I showed up like that, I'd be called washed up, past my prime, letting myself go." Her voice was getting more intense. "So I have to spend hours every day constructing this version of Cher that's acceptable, that's marketable, that's young enough and sexy enough and interesting enough to still matter. And it's exhausting. And it's unfair. And I'm tired of pretending it's not." Letterman's eyes were wide. "Cher, this is really honest. I'm done being dishonest," Cher said. "I've spent 20 years playing the game, smiling through interviews where men ask me about my weight, my age, my relationships, pretending I'm fine with magazine covers that Photoshop me beyond recognition, acting like it doesn't hurt when radio stations say I'm too old for their format." She looked directly at Letterman. "And you know what the worst part is? It works. The more I conform, the more I transform myself into this exaggerated version of femininity, the more successful I am. But the less I feel like myself." The studio was completely silent. You could hear the hum of the lights, the software of the cameras. "So who are you?" Letterman asked quietly. "Without all the construction?" Cher laughed, but it was a sad sound. "I don't know anymore. I've been performing for so long that I can't remember what's real and what's costume. Maybe it's all costume now. Maybe there's nothing underneath." She looked down at her hands, and for the first time, the audience saw Cher without the armor. "She looks tired, vulnerable, human. I have a daughter," Cher said, her voice softer now, chested. "She's 15. And sometimes she asks me, 'Mom, what do you actually look like?' And I don't know how to answer that, because I don't know. I've changed my hair color so many times. I've had plastic surgery. I've transformed my body. I've created this thing called Cher, and now I'm trapped inside it." Tears were forming in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "And the terrifying thing is, I can't stop. Because if I stop performing, if I stop reinventing, if I just try to be a regular person, I disappear. Women disappear in this industry the moment they stop being young and beautiful and new. We're disposable. And I refuse to be disposed of." What Cher said next would change the conversation forever. Cher stood up suddenly. Letterman looked startled. "I need to move," Cher said. "I can't sit still for this." She walked to the front of the stage, toward the audience. The cameras followed her. She stood at the edge, looking out at the faces staring back at her. "How many women are in this audience?" Cher asked. About half the hands went up. "And how many of you have been told you're too old, too fat, too loud, too much?" Cher asked. Almost all the women's hands stayed up. Some men's hands went up too. Cher nodded. "That's what I thought. Because that's the game. They make us feel like we're never enough, never young enough, never thin enough, never quiet enough, never perfect enough. And then they sell us products and procedures and promises that if we just change ourselves a little bit more, we'll finally be acceptable." Her voice was rising now, powerful and clear. "But it's a lie, because the goalpost keeps moving. I've had plastic surgery. I've starved myself. I've worked out until I collapsed. I've done everything they told me to do to stay relevant. And you know what? It's never enough. There's always something else to fix, something else to change, something else to hide." She turned back to face Letterman and the camera. "I'm 38 years old, and I'm considered old in this industry. Old. Madonna is 26, and they're calling her the future. Whitney Houston is 21, and they're calling her a sensation. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've been doing this for 2 decades. I've had #1 hits. I've won an Oscar. And I'm still fighting every single day to prove I deserve to exist in this business." She walked back toward the guest chair but didn't sit down. She stood next to it, one hand on the back. "And you know what I realized?" Cher said. "It's not about talent. It's not about experience. It's not about art. It's about youth. This industry worships youth, especially in women. And the moment you start aging, the moment you start showing signs of being human, they want to replace you with someone younger, fresher, newer." She looked at Letterman. "But I won't let them. I refuse to disappear. I will keep reinventing myself. I will keep fighting. I will keep proving that women don't have an expiration, and maybe I'll exhaust myself in the process. Maybe I'll lose myself completely, but at least I'll still be here." The audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then building into something powerful. Women were on their feet. Some were crying. Letterman stood up from behind his desk. He walked over to Cher. "Cher," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "what you just said, that's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard on this show." Cher's eyes were wet now. "I didn't mean to get so heavy. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine. I'm tired of smiling through the bullshit. Don't apologize," Letterman said. "Please don't apologize." He turned to the camera. "We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I think we just need to sit with what Cher just said, because I think she just changed the conversation." The show cut to commercial. Backstage during the break, Cher sat in the green room, her head in her hands. Her manager rushed in. "Cher, that was intense. Too much?" Cher asked, looking up. "No," her manager said. "It was perfect. It was honest." "But the network is freaking out. Let them freak out," Cher said. "I'm done caring what the network thinks." When the show came back from commercial, Letterman was alone at his desk. Cher's wig was still sitting there. "Cher is backstage composing herself," Letterman said. "And I want to take a moment to address what just happened. What you just witnessed wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. Cher just told the truth about what it's like to be a woman in the entertainment industry, about the impossible standards, about the constant pressure to stay young, stay relevant, stay perfect." He picked up the wig, looked at it. "This wig represents something bigger than just hair. It represents all the ways women have to transform themselves, package themselves, diminish themselves to be acceptable to an industry run by men." And Cher throwing it on my desk? That was an act of rebellion. That was her saying, "I'm done playing by your rules." He set the wig down gently, and I think we should all listen. A moment later, Cher walked back out. The audience gave her a standing ovation. She waved, smiled, and sat back down. "You okay?" Letterman asked. "I'm better than okay," Cher said. "I'm free." The episode aired in full. NBC received over 18,000 phone calls the next day. Some were angry. "Keep your feminist politics off my TV," they said. But the vast majority were different. "Thank you for letting Cher speak. I've never felt more seen as a woman. That was the most important 11 minutes of television I've ever watched." Women's magazines picked up the story. Newspapers wrote editorial. The conversation about women, aging, and the entertainment industry exploded into the mainstream. 2 weeks later, Cher received a call from a major fashion magazine. "We want you on the cover," they said. "No retouching, no wig, just you." Cher agreed. The cover became one of the best-selling issues of the decade. Years later, in 2003, a journalist asked Letterman about that night. "Do you remember it?" "Every second," Letterman said. "It changed how I booked women on the show, how I asked questions. It changed everything." "Did you stay in touch?" "We became real friends," he said. "She trusted me with something vulnerable, and I honored that. She taught all of us that survival sometimes looks like reinvention, and sometimes like revelation. Both take courage." The footage still exists. In 2015, it was released as part of a documentary about women in entertainment. The wig-throwing moment went viral, reaching over 40 million views in a month. Comments poured in. "Cher was saying this in 1985. She refused to disappear. That's heroism." Cher continued performing and reinventing herself for decades. In her 70s, she was still touring, still recording, still refusing to fade away. In a 2019 interview, a young journalist asked if she regretted that appearance. "That's the only interview I don't regret," Cher said. "It was the first time I stopped performing and started existing." "Why did it matter so much?" "Because I realized I didn't have to be perfect or young forever," she said. I just had to be honest. And honesty is the most powerful thing a woman can possess. In David Letterman's office, the wig sits in a glass case. Next to it is a note Cher sent him a week after the show. Thank you for letting me be messy, angry, and real. You gave me permission to stop performing. I'll never forget it. Cher. Letterman looks at it sometimes, and he remembers the night Cher threw her wig on his desk and refused to disappear.